Hello, and welcome to APT Management Compliance Training. My name is Jonas Sept. I'm the Chief Compliance and Privacy Officer. I've been with the company for over 18 years, working as a physical therapist technician, medical receptionist, physical therapist, clinical director, and regional director prior to accepting my current position in compliance. I can be reached by calling our headquarters office at 410-553-9686 or emailed at yhabte@apt-management.com. This compliance training will review the important sections from your compliance binder, but it is everyone's responsibility to read and understand the contents of their entire compliance binder. After completing your compliance training, you'll need to sign forms acknowledging you've completed the training. Please give me a call or email if you have any questions. The Code of Conduct applies to all employees and begins with a letter from the President, Tom Brady, that encourages employees to consult with their clinic director for clarification and guidance on compliance issues and mentions the compliance hotline. The compliance hotline phone number is 855-806-4296 and is a way for employees to report compliance concerns anonymously. It records a transcript of the call that is sent to the compliance officer. There is a no retaliation policy and no adverse action will be taken against anyone raising questions or making good faith concerns about proper misconduct. Following the letter from the President is a letter from the compliance officer detailing everyone's responsibility under the Code of Conduct, which are: know the Code of Conduct, obey the law, ask questions, report concerns, do not be pressured, cooperate, personal commitment, and leadership. Next is quality of care and services. Our number one focus at APT Management is the commitment to our patients. We respect the dignity, comfort, and privacy of every patient. If a patient requests a private room for treatment, they should receive one. We do not discriminate against anybody. We will provide appropriate and timely care for all patients without regard to race, religion, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, or national origin. Patient care will conform to acceptable clinical and safety standards. All clinicians employed to treat patients will stay within their scope of knowledge and have the credentials and experience needed to perform their duties. We respect patient privacy and abide with federal privacy and security regulations, including HIPAA. All patients are provided a Notice of Privacy Practice form with their registration packets informing them of how we protect their privacy. Workplace conduct, employment, and the work environment goes over common sense policies about how to carry yourself in the workplace. Be professional. Show respect to others. We will not tolerate sexual advances, harassment, comments, or other conduct that creates an intimidating or offensive environment, nor will we tolerate racial or religious slurs or other remarks, jokes, or conduct that encourages an offensive working climate. APT has adopted specific policies with respect to sexual harassment and discrimination, which provide channels for APT associates to bring such conduct to APT's attention. These policies and complaint channels are described in the Employee Handbook. Please read, understand, and comply with the contents of the Employee Handbook, as well as the policies and procedures applicable to your employment and responsibilities. A copy of the Employee Handbook is available on our APT Employee Portal. Moving on, next section is conflicts of interest. When signing the Code of Conduct, you'll have to disclose any potential conflicts of interest. Some examples of possible conflicts of interest include, but are not limited to, awarding business to an entity controlled by a family member, owning or possessing a significant interest in a competing entity, providing charitable contributions to entities where an employer or family member has a business interest, receiving loans from a customer or vendor, accepting a gift intended to influence decision, using company resources for personal business or gain. There is a Code of Conduct binder included in every office and an electronic copy on the Employee Portal. In the Employee Portal, under the Compliance section, you should click Compliance Training, where there is a form titled Code of Conduct Acknowledgement Certification and Conflicts of Interest Disclosure Form. You will electronically attest using this form, which includes conflicts of interest. Read and check only one box for number 7, requesting disclosure of any conflicts of interest. List any conflicts of interest if checking the second box. After, you will electronically attest by signing the completed form and clicking submit. I will reiterate these instructions at the conclusion of the training. Section 2 is titled Core Compliance Policies and Procedures. Duty to report potential compliance violations and anti-retaliation policy. APT management requires employees to promptly report any known or suspected violations of the Code of Conduct, compliance program, or any of the laws, rules, and regulations by which the company is governed. There are 4 ways to report compliance issues: reporting to supervisors or managers, reporting to the compliance officer, reporting to a member of the compliance committee, or reporting to the compliance hotline at 855-806-4296. The non-retaliation, non-retribution policy states that there will be no disciplinary or retaliatory actions against individuals who report issues in good faith. Good faith means the individual believes the potential violation actually occurred as he or she is reporting it. The non-retaliation, non-retribution policy does not allow employees to avoid punishment for reporting their own violations. However, self-reporting may be taken into account when determining disciplinary actions. Employees who believe they have been retaliated against for reporting violations should report the retaliation as soon as possible to their supervisor, clinic director, compliance officer, a member of the compliance committee, or the compliance hotline. Section 2.5, responding to government inquiries and investigations. This is a very important section that needs to be read by everybody. There is a quick reference guide found at the end of the section. It is company policy to fully cooperate with reasonable requests of government officials. If at any time an investigative demand letter, subpoena, or search warrant is received by an employee, the individual must immediately notify the compliance officer. If the compliance officer cannot be reached, the individual must immediately notify the HR director and president by calling the HR admin office at 410-553-9686. Employees or independent contractors should not release or copy documents in connection with or in response to an investigative demand letter, subpoena, or search warrant without the authorization of the compliance officer. No employee may remove, alter, create, or destroy documents or records, including but not limited to paper or electronic records, in anticipation of or during an investigation. If an investigator or other government representative appears in person, employees should request to see identification and business card or badge. A staff member should then call the government's representative's office to confirm their identity and authority. Staff should provide this information to the compliance officer as soon as possible. A search of the company's premises may not be conducted without a search warrant. A search warrant is a document permitting government agents to search and seize property described in the warrant. If an official shows up with a search warrant, you should ask for a copy or permission to make a copy and immediately provide to the compliance officer. Once a valid search warrant is provided, APT management employees may not stop the search. While the search is being conducted, a staff member, ideally a supervisor, needs to be appointed to communicate with the government representative and keep a detailed list of all documents seized or copied. Detailed notes must also be kept of all records inspected but not seized, and note any conversations between government representatives and employees. If any records are seized, the staff member in charge should request that the records be copied first. If they do not allow you to make the copies, call the compliance officer. If they request to seize computers, ask if you can copy all files first. Employees are required to answer questions concerning the location of documents, but they do not have to answer any other questions. You may tell the government official that you prefer to wait until you have counsel present before answering questions. If you are asked to sign an affidavit of any kind, explain that you are not authorized to sign any document prior to review by APT management's legal counsel. If you are asked to consent to an interview, you have the right to schedule the interview at a later time, and you also have the right to decline the interview. Employees are entitled to have a company representative present with them during the interview, and the company will arrange to have the company's attorney present during questioning at no cost to the employees. Under no circumstances are you either directly or indirectly ever to alter or destroy documents that are the subject of the investigation or inquiry. Remember, always be truthful and courteous, but know your rights. Fraud and Abuse Prevention, Section 2.6, APT is committed to comply with all state and federal laws, only bill for medically necessary services provided to patients. Any errors in procedures or units billed need to be corrected and brought to the attention of the billing department so corrective claims can be submitted and refunds issued for any overpayments. Discipline and Incentive Program. Employees found to have committed violations of the Code of Conduct, Compliance Program, or state and federal laws will be subject to appropriate disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment or contractual relationship. Section 3. Maintaining appropriate financial relationships. 3.1. Meals, gifts, and entertainment. This section details how meals, gifts, entertainment, and other benefits may be issued to actual or potential physician referral sources and their immediate family members. The calendar year limit is adjusted yearly, and the benefit limit for 2022 is $452. It is company policy that staff members are not allowed to accept cash or cash equivalents, such as gift cards, at any time from patients or referral sources. Staff can accept most gifts, such as food, gift baskets, or flowers, if they are under $25 in value, or can be divided amongst staff so they don't exceed $25 in value per staff member. Financial arrangements with referral sources, Section 3.2. Any and all financial arrangements, potential or actual referral sources, need to be in writing for fair market value for a term of at least 12 months and approved by the Board of Directors in advance. Company policy is that no gifts or services are to be provided to current or potential patients or their family members in exchange for the referral of their care. Section 4, Billing, Reimbursement, Patient Care, and Documentation of Services. We will first address billing and reimbursement, followed by patient care and documentation. Section 4.1, Billing and Reimbursement. All services provided to patients need to be medically necessary and rendered with the highest level of quality care. Claims for services provided need to accurately reflect the procedures, time, and units prior to submission for payment. Patients' accounts are reviewed for overpayments. Overpayments from federal payers, including Medicare and TRICARE, need to be refunded or have retraction request issued within 60 days of identification, and the compliance officer needs to be notified of any overpayments from federal payers. Section 4.2, Financial Hardship. Financial hardship is the only instance where we can waive copays, coinsurance, and/or deductible amounts for an in-network insurance. This is an unadvertised policy that is only offered upon request of patients experiencing financial hardship. Patients must complete the financial assistance worksheet located at the end of this section, and it must be submitted and approved by the compliance officer before we can waive any patient responsibility. The patient must submit proof of financial hardship that can include pay stubs or W-2s, and submitting the worksheet is not a guarantee that a waiver will be provided. Prohibited conduct regarding patient financial responsibility. Under no circumstances will employees advertise that private insurance or Medicare is accepted as payment in full. When verifying benefits, insurance companies always provide the disclaimer that benefit verification is not a guarantee of payment. Under no circumstances will employees advertise that patients will not incur any out-of-pocket expenses. Under no circumstances will employees routinely use financial hardship forms which state that the patient is unable to pay copays, coinsurance, and/or deductible amounts. Under no circumstances will employees charge Medicare beneficiaries higher amounts than those charged to other persons for for similar services. The company has one fee schedule charged to all patients regardless of their insurance. Under no circumstances will employees fail to collect copayments, coinsurance, and deductibles from a specific group of patients for reasons unrelated to financial hardship, such as to obtain referrals or induce patients to seek care with the company. Under no circumstances will employees fail to make reasonable collection efforts to collect a patient's balance. Patient care and documentation of services. All therapy services need to be documented and medically necessary. Therapy services performed by assistants need to be performed according to the therapist's plan of care. For federal payers such as Medicare Part B and TRICARE, therapy services must be performed under direct supervision with a therapist on site. Medicare Part A services are allowed to be performed under indirect supervision with the therapist making a supervisory visit at least every 30 days. Services that do not require the performance or supervision of a therapist are not skilled and are not considered reasonable or necessary services. There must be the expectation that the patient's condition will improve in a reasonable period of time. Amount, frequency, and duration of the services must be reasonable under accepted standards of practice. Physician referrals. Scripts and primary care physician referrals are different. A script for treatment provides evidence that a patient displays a need for care and is under the treatment of a physician and doesn't have to be from a specific doctor. A primary care physician referral must be from the patient's primary care doctor. For Medicare patients, a script or referral is evidence that the patient is under the care of a physician, and we need to send that physician the patient's plan of care for certification immediately. It is mandatory to fax the plan of care from evaluations and progress notes to all referring physicians so they are aware of their patient's treatment and progress before any follow-up visits. Plans of care need to be certified by the patient's physician. Initial certification of the plan of care is valid for 90 days or the length of the plan of care. Plans must be recertified every 90 days. Plans must also be recertified to approve any significant changes, such as a change in long-term goals. All attempts to have Medicare plan of care signed needs to be documented to account for delayed certification. Good standard practice requires at least 3 attempts. Documentation requirements, Section 5.5. Evaluations need to document medical necessity and include the diagnosis, subjective impressions of the patient's current functional status, objective measurable data, assessment scores, and the plan of care. In general, it is best practice to complete a progress note every 30 days. You should refer to insurance guidelines, specific state practice acts, and clinical guidelines for more precise rules and regulations. Documentation is required for every treatment day and procedure code in the form of a daily note. Daily notes should be completed in the office, not at home, within 48 hours of the visit. Discharge notes must be timely, no later than 30 days from the last visit, and also provide a reason for the discharge. It is important to understand the difference between the 8-minute rule for federal payers versus the rule of 8 for non-federal payers. Section 6, HIPAA Privacy and Security. HIPAA is broken down into 3 sections: the privacy rule, security rule, and breach notification rule. The Notice of Privacy Practices form is given to all patients. Front desk staff needs to verify that this form is signed by the patient or their guarantor, and a copy will be provided to patients upon request. The Notice of Privacy Practices form also details the patient's rights. Patients are allowed to receive a copy of all their records, and they can request changes if they believe information is inaccurate. Uses and disclosures of protected health information. APT is required to disclose PHI to patients or guarantor, to Department of Health and Human Services when required by the law. APT is permitted to disclose PHI for treatment, payment, and healthcare operations, treatment activities of another provider, to another healthcare provider for that provider's payment activities, to disclose PHI to friends, family, and representatives if the patient has given permission on their registration medical release form or provides verbal authorization. Legal representatives are to be treated the same as patients with respect to access to PHI and invoking privacy rights. APT operates under the minimum necessary rule that limits the release of PHI to only release the information being requested. HIPAA breach notification, section 6.4. A breach of PHI is the unauthorized acquisition, access, use, or disclosure of PHI in a manner which compromises the privacy or security of the protected health information. The compliance officer should be immediately notified if a breach of PHI is noticed or suspected. Cybersecurity and the HIPAA security rule. The security rule ensures information is not available or disclosed to unauthorized people, ensures information is not altered or destroyed in any unauthorized manner, and it ensures information is accessible and usable on demand by authorized personnel only. There are three safeguards under the HIPAA security rule: administrative, physical, and technical. Administrative safeguards are internal policies and procedures that protect patient health information. Physical safeguards protect electronic health information from unauthorized access or national disaster. And technical safeguards provide solutions used to protect electronic health information. Phishing is the fraudulent practice of sending emails under the guise of a legitimate or reputable organization. These emails fool the recipient into revealing sensitive information such as login IDs, encryption keys, credit card information, bank information, or patient information, just to name a few. Being able to differentiate between phishing and legitimate emails is key. We have seen an increase in the number of these phishing emails. When attempting to spot a bad actor or phishing email, here are some things to look for. Emails that come from an unfamiliar sender. When replying, the email does not get directed back to the address it was sent from. Subject includes excessive exclamation marks. Contains generic greeting. Requires the disclosure of a password and/or login ID. Contains a link to an unfamiliar website. Includes an urgent call to action. Explains a dire consequence for not taking action. Contains spelling errors, poor grammar, or inappropriate capitalization of words. Contains unexpected attachments, and no contact information is supplied. If you are ever unsure if an email is legitimate, it is best practice to stop. Do not respond or click any links on the email, and contact your direct supervisor or the supposed sender by phone and receive verbal confirmation that the email is in fact legitimate. If the email is suspected to be a phishing email, immediately contact the compliance officer and IT help desk for additional assistance. Remember, it is always better to be safe than sorry. Congratulations, you have completed the 2023 annual compliance training. Remember to read through the entire Code of Conduct and APT policy binder available at each clinic, and an electronic copy is available on the employee portal. Now, please go into the employee portal under the compliance section, then the compliance training tab. There is a compliance form titled Code of Conduct Acknowledgement Certification and Conflicts of Interest Disclosure Form for you to read. Just check one of the boxes for number 7 and list any conflicts of interest if checking the second box. After, you will electronically attest by signing the completed form and click Submit. Thank you and have a great day.